guys, it's Ashley, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in June. But first, I have some things I want to get to, so if you would rather just skip and get to the video, you can go to the timestamp I will leave right here. Otherwise, here are the three things. First off, I want to say that I stand in full support of the Black Lives Matter movement. I haven't made a video since everything happened, and I just wanted to put that out there on this platform. I've been working on educating myself, incorporating more books by Black authors into my TBR, and just keeping aware of the things that are happening in the world now. I will have some information and links in the description below that you can check out if you're interested in finding more places to donate and sign petitions and educate yourself to learn more and things like that. So if you're heading in that direction on this video, go ahead and check that out in the description. And I thank you for continuing to educate yourself like I am, and for incorporating more books by Black authors, learning as much as you can, doing what you can, and creating just like a better world for all of us, but especially Black people. Second thing that I wanted to mention is that I have a new reading spot. Shout out to my mom and my grandma for helping me get this reading chair as an early birthday present. I'm really excited about it, and I love it so much, and I'm happy that I can just swivel it over and have a new filming location with my plant babies and my shelves in the background so you can see like all of me in one shot. And the third thing that I wanted to put out there is that June was a really weird month for me. I had a lot of personal things going on, and also I managed to read 7 books, which I don't think has ever happened ever in my life. So without further ado, let's just get into this before this video is way too long. Some of you may have known that the Olympic Games readathon, which was a Percy Jackson readathon, was supposed to happen in the month of June, and it did happen, but I decided to not be a part of it. What had happened was I picked out my TBR, I filmed it, I went to upload it, and then everything happened with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I wanted to adjust my TBR in a way that would reflect what I wanted to be reading at that moment, and I didn't want to put the video out and then have to change everything, and it was just a lot. I decided not to put the video out, and I also decided to just nix the readathon as a whole because it was too hard to find books that I was interested in reading that went for those challenges at the time. So all in all, I didn't do the readathon, but I did end up reading one of the books that I had originally picked for it. And so the first book that I read this month was Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, which is so far left field from what I usually read because it's historical fiction based in World War II, but I really loved it. Like I said, it's based in World War II, right at the end where Germany is just starting to lose against Russia, who is invading. And we follow four characters who come from different backgrounds, who are all trying to make their way to the Wilhelm Gustloff, which is one of a few ships that Germany has that they are transporting refugees on so that they can get safe to freedom. I knew that the book was probably going to be sad because it's a World War II historical fiction, and it was. I cried like a baby at the end. But what I do want to point out about this story is that I really actually loved every single point of view that there was. I feel like whenever there's a multiple point of view story, I end up picking one character and liking them the most, and then there's also one character that I don't like as much as the rest of them. And for this one, I think because the point of view switched so quickly, it was like a couple of pages here, a couple of pages there, and then we were like switching between characters, and the fact that they were all like so different and so interesting between one another that I just really enjoyed all of it. Like, there wasn't a point where I wanted to just like skim through and get to the good parts. They were all good parts. Definitely recommend, if you haven't read this already, you're into historical fiction and you want a good cry, this is the one. So next I picked up a book that had been on my TBR for a very long time and that I should have gotten to earlier and just kept putting it off. And that was Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mbalia. It is so good. It was so good. I love Tristan. Tristan's character is so good. He's so funny and he doesn't give up despite the fact that he just suffered a massive loss before this book even starts, and he's grieving most of the book and he has to figure out how to save the world after he punched a hole in it. And all in all, I really loved him as the center of the story. But another thing that I really loved was how different this one felt compared to the other Rick Riordan Presents books that I've read, because this one focuses not only on mythology but also on like the fables and folklore of African American history. Like, there's John Henry, there's Brer Rabbit, and so that combined with the mythology in this story just made it super unique feeling, and I really liked it. So after that I ended up picking up one of the arcs on my shelf, which I don't normally do, which is bad of me because I'm a book reviewer, but this one I was actually excited about. So I ended up picking up the Gilded ones by Namina Forna. I do want to say that my arc says on sale May 2020, but I'm 90% sure this got pushed back to 2021. So I apologize, but you have something to look forward to next year because it's really good. So the story is like a West African inspired fantasy where in this world at 16, girls are sent to do this like blood ritual where this priest of sorts will like cut them, and then if they bleed red, they're considered pure and can marry and have kids and stuff. But if they bleed gold, they're considered demonic and impure and are sentenced to death, because that makes sense. We follow this girl named Dika who ends up bleeding gold and gets sentenced to death. But we find out later that the people who bleed gold are actually called Alakai. Means that they are sort of near immortal, like superhumans. So they have like enhanced speed and strength, and they also can't die. They have like one true death, and until you find that true death, you just keep getting resurrected. That, combined with the army of Alakai girls the Emperor decides that he wants to create, makes this book. So Dika ends up getting rescued and gets sent to this like war camp of sorts and trains to become a soldier. There are big like moments of clarity in this book that I really enjoyed, and I loved seeing Dika's transformation through it all as well. Her character arc was really good. All in all, this is honestly a very relevant book despite it being fantasy, and I highly recommend reading it when it comes out. I might do a giveaway of my arc, so make sure to keep an eye out on my Instagram for that, because that is where I will do that if I end up doing it, which I probably will. So at this point in the month, some publisher, maybe it was Fierce Reads or Epic Reads, I don't know, they decided to do a $2.99 ebook sale, and so I picked up 2 books, the first of which was Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kahn, which I read as soon as I bought it because I was super excited for this book, and I actually enjoyed this a lot. The story is about a girl named Alice who is asexual, and she's not having struggles coming to terms with asexuality, but she's having struggles with how to tell her family and friends that she's asexual without them thinking that like she's incapable of love because she doesn't want sex, or she doesn't want romance just because she doesn't want to have sex, like that kind of thing. Which are all very bogus statements, by the way. I don't know if anybody says bogus anymore, but that's bogus. I really enjoyed this story. I thought it was fun and cute and quirky and feel good, and the romance was super cute. I know that some people, when I went to mark this book as read on Goodreads, I read some people's reviews, and some said that the writings felt too like youthful in a way. It felt like it was trying too hard to be like that quirky girl next door kind of feeling. And also there are a lot of parentheses that are used. Like this character has a lot of like side comments and like side conversations with herself that she likes to have. So if you're not into that sort of thing, I don't know, just be aware of that when you are looking at this book. But I enjoyed it. I didn't think that it distracted too much from the story. I can't speak for the Ace rep, but I really loved the story. So this month was like a very mood reading month for me. I was really into just looking at my shelves and being like, yes, that is the book I'm going to read. So in this next book's circumstance, that's exactly what happened. And so the next book that I read was I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick, which is another arc. I don't know what's happening to me. So I actually tried to film this video before now, like the first time. I just got so tongue-tied trying to explain this book because it's very confusing. So basically the story is about this girl named Zoe who goes missing New Year's Eve and nobody knows what happens to her. And then come summertime, this girl named Anna comes down from Brooklyn into the Hamptons, which is where Zoe lives and went missing, for a babysitting gig for the summer. Everybody is kind of remarking on the resemblance between Anna and Zoe the entire time. And then, come to find out, Anna ends up confessing for Zoe's murder, and that's where the story starts. So like, all of this has happened, but then we go back and we learn about all of it. To make this easier to understand, we follow 3 different perspectives. So the first one that you get in this entire book is Anna confessing to the murder, present day. Then we go back in time to the beginning of summer and we learn how Anna came into the town and what she did and how all of this ended up happening. And then the third perspective that we get, I want to say like a third of the way through the book it starts, is actually a podcast that Zoe's sister's friend started called Missing Zoe, which is all about trying to figure out what the heck happened to her. That's this book. I'm gonna say the first like 30 to 40 pages of this story I was just like staring at the page going, what the fuck is happening right now? Because I was so confused. It's so confusing in the beginning, and I wasn't expecting that, despite the fact that there are like 3 different perspectives. But then once you understand exactly what's happening and how the time jumps are happening, it gets a lot easier. And by, I want to say, like halfway through the book, I was speeding through it because I wanted to know what happened so badly. It gets so confusing that you're just like desperate to know what happens, and then you just speed through the rest of the book. So all in all, I really liked it. It kept me on the edge of my seat toward the end, and I was honestly in my room like flipping through the last few pages because I was so eager to finish and find out what happened. And then the ending sort of like scared me a little bit, and then I looked in my dark room and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be reading this at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I put it down and read the rest of the pages the next day. I will say though, this book reminded me a lot of the synopsis of Sadie, which I know a lot of people have loved. So if you liked that, maybe try this one. So then the next book that I ended up reading was the second book I bought in that ebook sale that I talked about a couple books back. And so that second book ended up being Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. This book comes off, when you read the synopsis, as something a little bit different than it is. So the synopsis says, like, Echo Brown is a wizard, there's magic in the world, stuff like that. Portals are opening, things along that nature. And you think, like, oh, this has some fantastical elements to it. In reality, all of that was just a metaphor for things that were happening in Echo Brown's life at the time. And this book is more of like a memoir. Despite the fact that I went into it with different expectations, I actually really, really enjoyed this book. First of all, the writing style is so beautiful. I loved it so much. There were a lot of chapters where there would be 2 things happening at once, and she would just kind of like cut off one paragraph and start the other right in the middle of a sentence, and it just somehow flowed so well in my brain, and I really liked that. So I was halfway through the book and still trying to figure out how I felt about this, and I decided to look at other people who have read this book to see what they thought, which is sometimes something that I do to try to like figure out exactly what I'm feeling. So I ended up finding Books and Lala's review of it. I think she read it in January of 2020. I can't remember. If you want to go look for that video, you can. She had said that she was worried that publishers were going to not misrepresent this, but promote it in a way, and people were going to read the synopsis and think exactly what I thought and go into it and not like the book. So I definitely feel that. If you read the synopsis and you're thinking, oh my god, this sounds like a cool fantasy, you are sorely mistaken. It's a really good book. I highly recommend you read it because it's really good and it's powerful and it's very intense though. It has a lot of dark moments. There are trigger warnings for drug abuse, substance abuse, addiction, sexual assault, like anything that has to do with any of those. Just be aware of that going into this book. There's a lot of things that happen in this book that are dark and that are intense. It's still just such a good book though. Highly recommend. Like, highly recommend. So the final book that I have here is one that I have been wanting to read for quite a while now because it's one that came out in 2008, I think, and I haven't heard a whole lot about it on BookTube, but I've heard about it, which is why I had it on my shelf this whole time. And anyway, to get to the point, that book is Graceling by Kristen Cashore. So I knew I was gonna like this going into it because it's a YA fantasy and the synopsis sounded really good to me, and it did not disappoint. I really, really enjoyed it. I think the first half of this book I read in a day and it was great, and then the last half I read in like 3 hours because I just wanted to know what was gonna happen. If you've never heard of this story for some reason, basically this world that we live in, it's a fantasy world, but there are people who are called Gracelings and they have different abilities. So you can have like a cooking grace, or a dancing grace, or a swordsman grace, or a hand fighting grace, and things like that, and you're good at those things. Well, this girl follows Katza, who is a young woman who has a killing grace. Her uncle is the king of one of these kingdoms, and she's basically used as his pawn. Then there's this guy named Poe who comes in, who is the prince of another kingdom, and they get to know each other, and then all of this stuff happens, and they have to go on this journey to find out who actually kidnapped his grandfather, and it's like, it's a lot, but it's so good. I highly recommend if you're just looking for like a really good YA fantasy. It's like a solid YA fantasy. I liked this book. So those are all of the books that I read this month. My mouth is so dry right now from having talked so much. Oh my god. I should be putting up a July TBR within a couple days, so make sure you keep an eye out for that, and let me know what the best book that you read in June was down below so I can add some more books to my TBR. I have a lot of books that I want to get to, so I'm really hoping that now that I have a lot of free time, I'll be able to get to all of those books. So guys, I think that is going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and sticking through all of my ramblings about all of these books, and I will catch you later. Goodbye!